Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all. I am Redul on behalf of Care Ratings. Welcome you to our today's webinar on power, current dynamics, and developments. We appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar. Our speakers for today is Mr. Amod Khanorkar, Senior Director at Care Ratings, along with Ashish Nainan, Research Analyst from the Industry Research Team. The presentation is in form of the discussion is in form of a presentation which is visible on your screen. In case of queries, please key in the questions. We'll be having a Q&A session no sooner the presentation ends. May I request Amod to give his opening remarks?
Thanks, Mradul, and a very good afternoon to all, and welcome to the Care Ratings webinar on current dynamics and development in power sector. The focus today would be mostly on thermal power. We would like to begin our commentary on a positive note. As far as power sector is concerned in the current fiscal, despite the various odds stacked against the sector, especially the power generation, the fundamentals now by and large seem to be shifting towards the positive side in terms of demand. Power demand growth has stayed about over 5.5 to 6% in the medium term. We expect this to continue over the coming 2-3 years. Sorry. We are also positive about the capacity additions or the PLF of thermal plants staying above 60% mark going forward, as capacity addition has been almost negligible in this segment, in the thermal segment, in the recent past. In this presentation, we would also be discussing how the capacity in the sector has grown, the major constituents of the capacity addition. Additionally, we would also be discussing performance of some of the key states as far as demand and supply is concerned in some of the geographies. The focus lies in bringing forward some key findings in terms of issues facing the sector, beginning with the key trend of rising overdues from from state discoms to the power gencos. The payment dues have been hurting the gencos extensively, as we see late payment impact their overall financial viability and sustainability. This is something, frankly speaking, that has been going on for years together now, and various efforts taken by various governments over a period of time have borne little fruit. The latest one being Uday really has not come up to the mark in terms of what was expected of it. As of now, in terms of payments, the overdues are broadly towards thermal plants because of the preference that is given to the RE sector in terms of payment priority. But if this overdues to the thermal plants continue like this, and if the corrective measures are not implemented, uh, it's in all likelihood it can always engulf the other form of generators as well. Our findings indicate that a problem of overdue is majorly limited to few states, whereas rest continue to make payment in a by and large timely manner. The larger issue is when we will really see a secular improvement in state power sector state power sector and their finances. Other than this, we would also be touching upon the issue of tariff trend in short-term market and how issues of coal supply have bearing on tariffs in the short term. With this, I would hand over now to my colleague Ashish to take you through the details of the topic.
Thank you, sir, and a very warm good afternoon to all attendees. We'll begin with our presentation with a broad overview on the sector, and we'll be talking about so India's total power consumption increased by, like sir said, 5.7, 5.8% during the first 10 months of FY19. And the silver lining here has been a 25% growth in renewable energy generation, and the overall generation share of renewable power in the country growing to around 10%. In terms of the per capita consumption, it continues to be around 1149 units, which is way below the world average of 3052 units. Now, one positive development for power consumption has been the union government being able to successfully implement the household electrification scheme, Saubhagya or Power for All, within its targeted period of time, which was December 2018. Now, though it may not show directly in terms of a major change in the power consumption demand right now, but we see this as a very positive development as far as the last mile connectivity and supply side is concerned. And this also holds true in case of the large installed capacity that we have in terms of thermal and other sources of energy. In terms of installed capacity, we have seen once again we have seen this year renewable energy constituting for almost 80% of the entire installed capacity having taken place during the year. Almost 7 gigawatts has of solar and wind energy have come up together, and some part of it has been from biofuel. Despite having added around 2.5 gigawatts of capacity in thermal energy, the net addition has been almost negligible, since we saw some of the older plants, just for example, like Badarpur plant being done away with during the year. And so the overall net addition or the net capacity addition during the year was hardly zero point 0.1 gigawatt. Now, in terms of the largest player, NTPC continues to be the largest thermal power company with almost 53 gigawatts, and other major players in the segment include Adani, JSW, Tata, and Reliance Power. Interestingly, each of the large thermal power, including NTPC, they have also been growing a portfolio of renewable energy, and which is a positive trend. Now, further breakdown of renewable energy capacity, this shows that wind power is at around 35 gigawatts, which is third to the overall. Which is followed by, so we have highest in thermal, which is followed by hydropower, so which has been recategorized as renewable energy, and finally we have third at wind power, and we have solar energy at around 27 gigawatt, and biofuel and small hydro makes for an additional 12 to 13 gigawatts as of now. Uh, Now, if we talk about the power generation trend in terms of annual consumption, the overall consumption touched 1156 billion units in the 10-month period. Like we earlier mentioned, the growth has been around 5.8% over the previous year's production in the corresponding period. Thermal power continues to contribute around 78%. So this would include most of it being from thermal or coal-based power plants, and around 3% of the total consumption from gas-based plants, and the remaining from other sources of thermal. Share of hydro and nuclear have contracted over the years, so it has come down to around 13% of total from around 15 to 17% in the earlier years. And renewable energy during the year has grown marginally to around 9.5% of the total share. In terms of monthly power generation trend, so what we have witnessed this year is that monthly electricity produced remained at a considerably higher level of 115 billion units per month, which is a sizable shift from the earlier average of around 100 to 105 billion units every month. Now, the growth is well spread across the year, where we have seen most of the months showing above average growth. But if we witness 4 months in particular, that would be July to October, where we have witnessed considerable growth in the range of 8 to 10% levels in terms of the overall production. Now, these months also, in a way, witnessed increased production in some of the manufacturing sectors like metals and cement, apart from the seasonal demand. So during the current financial year, with an exception of January, all other months have witnessed an above average growth of electricity produced. One significant development which has led to this steady growth during the year, or we could say the growth story in the power sector, has been the substantial decline in power deficit. And this with an exception of northern region, which has contributed to whatever little deficit that we have seen. All other regions have maintained a deficit between 0.0 to 0.5% throughout the year. Now, this has been made possible through the national grid integration, which we witnessed, which has been happening over the last 3 to 4 years, and South India, which was among one of the regions which were a bit separated. So we have seen them also integrating, and they have been able to cut down to the deficit to near zero. So the overall deficit has been in the range of let's say 0.5 on the lower side, and 1.2, 1.4 on the higher side. And some of this deficit has come from two states majorly, which would be Jammu and Kashmir and UP. And some of it is due to the electrification drive under the Power for All scheme, which we have witnessed, due to which they couldn't really supply to the overall power requirement. Now, in terms of drivers and industry peculiarities, we have four major drivers in the power sector, and we would mainly divide most of it the demand coming from domestic users, irrigation and industrial and commercial, and a very small part of it coming from railways. So these are the main. This would be the industry in terms of drivers of power, and we have seen the Power for All scheme giving shot to the domestic user segment, which would actually witness some of the incremental demand during the year, which would be quite significant on a long-term basis, on a 3 to 5 year basis. Whereas industrial and commercial does witness a time to time, as the manufacturing activity increases, the overall demand from this segment increases for a brief period of time. Irrigation and agriculture, as the sowing, if the rainfall is less and the sowing increases, the irrigation and agriculture sector, depending on how each state sows, depending on the different seasons. So it is quite seasonal, and it varies from year to year. And finally, railways has a very fixed offtake, and as the electrification drive increases across railway, and we see a considerable amount of investment being done by the railway ministry, we would witness the demand slowly picking up from the railways and as well. In terms of regional drivers, we have four broad regions, and in terms of demand, when we talk about northern region, uh, some of the drivers would be rapid urbanization and pickup in commercial activity, and irrigation led by rural electrification would be the next segment. Now, if we talk about the current year, north, in terms of demand, Rajasthan and Haryana have led the overall growth in power during the year, and this could be attributed to the new connections which have been, or the households who have been newly electrified in these regions. So the overall penetration across Rajasthan especially has been low, and post Power for All, we have seen quite a few homes being electrified. Whereas the overall electrification was much higher in terms of number of households in UP. In terms of the growth in consumption, it has been quite flat during the year. So it seems that it was more of a metering exercise in states like UP, and more of an electrification drive in a state like Rajasthan or Haryana. When we talk about Western region, so we have two industrial heavyweights in Maharashtra and Gujarat, and these were the driver for demand in the region. And one new entrant in terms of demand for consumption was Madhya Pradesh. And once again, Power for All has been the driver in this state, as it is among the one of the states which has seen or witnessed highest number of new homes being electrified. Southern region, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, which are the new industrial hubs in terms of new capacity in manufacturing and industries, as well as commercialization and urbanization taking place, being the newest states in the country. So these were the major drivers in the region. All other states more or less have been flat, not much growth in terms of consumption. Finally, we have the eastern region and the northeastern region. So northeastern region could be concluded in terms of not much growth has been seen in consumption. So not sizable improvement in the overall connectivity, since it is an underpenetrated region. But if we talk about eastern region, two states which have stood out would be Bihar and Odisha, which led to most of the demand increase in the region, and seem to have benefited in the overall electrification drive. Some of it could be attributed to the increase in farming in Bihar and adjoining areas. So that has majorly been, these two states have been the major overall demand driver in the region. So when we speak about regional demand, not a lot of shift in terms of the share of electricity which they consume. Only the one region which we have seen, like we said, was the eastern region, where Bihar and Odisha, like I said. So the overall share has actually grown from 11.2 to 11.5% of the national consumption. Otherwise, most of the regions have more or less been steady. Southern region has witnessed a 40 basis point fall. North and west have more or less been steady, and northeast has also remained steady, not much growth or not much decline. Now, despite all this growth, there has been one factor which is hurting companies in the generation segment or generation companies segment extensively, and this has been the overall pending payments from state discoms. Now, the overall dues have grown to over 40,300 crores as reported for the last month, December 2018. And one general trend is that discoms make large tranches of payments to the generation companies in the month of March and September. Now, if we look at this broad number of 40,300 crores, it is not evenly spread across all the states in the country. So, interestingly, just 85% of the overall dues of this 40,000 crore or 33,000 crores roughly comes from roughly 9 states. Which are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, and MP. Now, Rajasthan and MP have dues at a comparatively lesser rupees 200 crores, 2,000 crores each, whereas UP, Maharashtra, and TN lead at 6,500, 4,750, and 4,200 crores respectively. Now, if I am to categorize these 9 states into 2 categories, namely regularly paying ones and ones with overdue, we feel UP, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh with around 13,200 crores have a fewer pending payments with over 150 days billing. So they are more regular with paying their dues to generation companies at less than around at an average of maybe 100 to 150 days. And most of the large dues are cleared within this period of time. But for the remaining 6 states, namely Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, MP, these 6 states have a combined 19,000 crore worth of dues, and over 60% of the unpaid dues is paid over 150 days or older. So this 150 days is more of a common time period which we found across these 6 states. Else, for some states like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, there are much larger bills pending for over 18 months and above. So this indeed is a matter of concern, and the bills, I mean, they have been pending for 600 days in some cases. So these 6 states tend to make more payments over and above maybe 150 days, 180 days, 200 days. So we have Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and in the same order, J&K, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. Now, one of the key reasons, and like we said, like we mentioned in our mailers, that one of the key measure which was taken by the central government to address this problem was Uday, and one of the key banner under Uday was to keep the AT&C losses under 15%, bring it down to 15% by March 19. So one of the key issues with some of the states has been the AT&C losses not really coming under the levels which they were assigned. Each state has their own targets, and we do witness some of the states actually expanding on those targets. So from the 22% for Chhattisgarh, it has expanded to 30%. Similarly, for Bihar, it has come down, not really come down, but it has actually expanded by 100 basis points. Even Uttar Pradesh has witnessed a marginal expansion. Some states like Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan have actually been able to decrease the AT&C losses to an extent, and this could be attributed to the metering drive under the Power for All, where they have been able to make some collection from especially from power theft in the domestic segment or in the industrial segment. So they have actually improved on some of the payments across some of the states, but the overall trend or the all India AT&C continues to be at a higher 20% against a 15% target for March 2019. Now, among the best states in terms of, or among the states which have been more regular with their payments to discoms, we have around 6 to 8 states, beginning with Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Bihar, West Bengal, and Odisha, and some states of northeastern region, which make sure that they make their payments within that 120 days or earlier in most cases. Now, when we speak about overall payments. Now, one significant issue for discoms has been procuring power, and we have seen how tariffs for renewable energy and other sources of energy have come at rock bottom level of around 2.44 rupees in cases like solar and wind. One significant issue has been the short-term tariff, and in the last 18 months, another issue has been the very high short-term market tariffs at a particular time when there is acute peak shortage or excessive demand from the industry. So tariff or exchange traded tariffs have actually breached the rupees 10 mark after quite some time. Now, the part of this problem has been attributed to non-availability of coal, and the other part being that it there is sustained demand from non-captive manufacturing units, especially metals and cement. Now, this coincided with the seasonal demand, especially in the months of May, June, and September, October. So, not exactly. The question is this going to be a norm? So that would be quite unlikely, since some sectors seem to have had unexpected demand during the previous year, and this spiked the tariff for those 2 months, especially in May and June, and September and October. And in a way, this has set a precedent for both the suppliers of fuel and the power producers to stock fuel accordingly going forward. So, follow-on years, we might actually see the demand maybe peak, but the tariffs may come at a much normalized level. The kind of power demand was unforeseen both for the producers as well as the coal suppliers, and this led to some panic during those peak periods of 4 months. But it did come as a shot in the arm for some of the gencos, since exchanges are offering an additional income avenue for power sellers, especially if profitability is key for some of them. In terms of coal, we feel that it also the state miners have considerably increased their production levels, and they would be very much be able to meet some of their targets of over 636 million ton this year. In terms of fulfillment, like I said, it was unforeseen demand for both the suppliers of power, as well as the power producers or generation companies. And so, to that extent, we have seen that the overall fulfillment from Coal India has been roughly around 85% to 90%, and in some months it has well exceeded that 90% level. This is a favorable improvement. So in the beginning of FY19, we did witness favorable improvement in the fulfillment levels, but it declined in the months of September and October, which led to the scarcity. So it is also clear that the high coal production during the year, the fulfillment has come at a lower level from the state-run miners, and so part of this has been due to the supply chain issues, especially availability of rakes. So some producers on their part were unable to stock enough coal for the same reason, and so, like I said, it's unforeseen demand. So stocking coal becomes an issue as they receive delayed payments for discoms, and they have to make the payments to the coal miners on time. So it seems that during that period of May, June, or prior to that, they avoided overstocking. But when the demand actually rose, the rakes were not there. So it was unavailable, or they came at a much higher price. So power plants in few states in particular face this issue of non-availability of coals, especially Maharashtra and some southern states of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So with this, we come to an end of discussing some of the salient issues in the sector. And I would like to conclude by saying that we expect the overall demand for electricity production to be in the range of 5.5 to 6.5%, or 6 to 6.5 in FY19 and 20. And peaking of dues in gencos is a cause of concern. In terms of net capacity addition, we expect thermal power capacity addition to remain net addition to remain in at zero levels. And for the next year, we expect over the next 12 to 18 months, the overall addition in renewable energy capacity in the range of 25 to 30 gigawatts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Participants will be taking a break of 2 minutes before we begin a Q&A session. In case of queries, you are please requested to key in the question slot provided. I repeat, we'll be having a break of 2 minutes before we begin a Q&A session. Thank you.
Hi, this is Amod, and I'll take up some of your questions. First is from Santosh KVS. He asks about concerns about rising NPAs in the thermal sector and future of thermal power plants. Is renewable a threat to thermal? Thanks, Santosh. Thanks for your question. In terms of concerns of rising NPAs, frankly speaking, with the cycle of NPAs now turning, and then some of these plants having come to come through the IBC process, this frankly speaking should be now coming down, and any new capacity additions that will happen only when now the developers are sure of demand for their produce, and then so also remunerative prices for the electricity. So in terms of NPAs, frankly speaking, they should be slowly coming down. Now, looking at the same issue from a different point of view, in terms of why really did this NPAs happen, and couple of answers to that could be you someone set up the capacity at a extremely high cost, thereby the tariffs really didn't support in terms of project IRRs and so on. Other would be that some of this became NPA because utilities didn't pay in time. Third could be the coal was not available, transmission infrastructure was not available, and so on. So some of the core issues, frankly speaking, have not gone away as far as the electricity sector is concerned. The electricity sector as a whole, in terms of the larger off-takers, which are state discoms, their finances, they continue to bleed, and uh, significant improvement is really not there. So some of those issues they continue. So but having said that, overall, I think the aspect of a NPA or a new NPA creation in the sector in the coming couple of years, that frankly speaking should be coming down. Second point that you asked is renewable being threat to thermal. See, renewable, the way government has pushed it, obviously that has led to lower rates and so on. And on a face value, thermal looks a bit unremunerative. Um but really, the renewable become threat to thermal when we have some solution on a storage side. The moment you have that, either in whatever form in terms of technology, then it is going to be game changer. We have ample solar irradiation, and frankly speaking, that can really be harnessed. But till we don't have a competitive storage solution, a requirement of a thermal as a base load sort of thing, that will really continue, and renewable will be, frankly speaking, sort of a complementing the thermal plants. So for a couple of maybe at least a decade or so, really thermal should not have too much of a problem, unless we see a technology shift, and really utility scale storages are available at a competitive prices. Then it could be a totally different ball game. So that's from Santosh. Next question is from the line of um, Mr. Alok Ranjan, and his question is, by when do we see that there will be significant peak power deficit, which may lead to significant increases in thermal power generation capacity? Now, Ranjan, thanks for your question. Alok, sorry. And the point is this, that currently we are frankly speaking using the existing capacity that the pickup in the PLFs have started, and really we don't have significant peak deficits. Once this becomes sort of increases to some level of something like anything between say 5 to 10%, that will start attracting people in terms of setting up new capacity. The challenge is, of course, is that you really cannot wait for deficits to turn up and then say that okay, we will set up a thermal capacity. It has a good lead time of of couple of years, something like 4 to 5 years. So frankly speaking, the serious players, they will continue with their capacity additions, and this will be something like state central undertakings like NTPC. Um, and the other aspect of a peak capacity is, of course, the or a peak deficits is how demand is going to pan out in terms of the economy, the way it picks up, and all of us have been expecting the economy and the as a result of that power demand to pick up. It has really not happened for last couple of quarters, but green shoots are there. Maybe they are a bit slow, but they are picking up. So fingers crossed on that. uh, so that's from Alok. Next question is from Sujoy Biswas, and he asks about what sort of a thermal capacity addition in the next 5 years or so is expected, and who possibly will be putting it up. Sujay, thanks for your question. The capacity, very broadly, we look at number something like 6,800, that is 68 to 70 gigawatt of a thermal capacity addition in next 4 to 5 years, primarily coming from central undertakings and some of the state undertakings. Some bigger private players are also thinking of setting up, or they are sort of trying to pick up the assets which are coming in the market in terms of through the IBC route and so on. So and the additions will come from some private parties apart from the central undertakings like NTPC.
Next question is from Sujoy once again, and he wants to ask what would be some insights into government's target for reaching 175 gigawatts by FY22. Now, we have been saying this consistently that as of now, the government had come out with a calendar in which they specified what would be the number of gigawatts they would be handing out every quarter, every year. And what we have been seeing is that it has not really been happening. There has been a host of issues which have been hampering the auctioning. Where we have even seen some of the auctions being cancelled and re-auctioned. So the plan now would be we have another 3 years, and over these 3 years, around 100 gigawatts have to be added. So we don't really look at it happening in the same order. Right now, we have achieved around 76 gigawatt of total renewable energy. We have another 99 remaining, and so over the next 3 years, what we could ideally be witnessing is around 15 to 20 gigawatts on an average being added, and so the total capacity somewhere would be around 130 to 140 gigawatts in this front. So there would be another shortfall. What government has done additionally is that they have recategorized hydropower project under renewable energy. So large hydropower projects over 25 megawatt have been recategorized as renewable energy. So that would be additional 45 gigawatts existing, and some another 5 to 6 gigawatt of new capacity coming from large players like NHPC. Which is a centrally run hydropower company. So that would be another 50 gigawatts. So 45 recategorized and 6 additional gigawatts coming up in the next 4 to 5 years. So essentially, government would be somewhere falling short of the overall target of 175, but bringing it along with hydropower, I think they would be able to achieve roughly 180 to 190 gigawatts in totality.
Hi, this is Amod again. Uh, this question from Mr. Alok Ranjan. How is the capex per megawatt different in different segments like thermal, hydro, wind, and solar? Thanks, Alok, for your question. In terms of capex, today, if you want to set up thermal capacity very broadly, the outlay will be something like between 4 to 5 crore per megawatt. For hydro, the number could be anything between 6 to 10, depending on geography and depending on geological and some of those complexities, which will determine the extent of civil capex that one needs to do. Wind will be about 5 to 6 crore to a megawatt, and solar will be about 4 to 4.5 for every megawatt in terms of capital outlay. This There's a question from Mr. Albert Dacosta, and he asks, in fact, it's a very interesting question. How much reduction in net power demand broadly is expected from shift to LED and SCADA adoption in city lighting systems, and can we expect tariffs to sustain at current level as reflected in the recent PPAs? Uh, Now, in terms of reduction in net power demand, for a city, the lighting is only one part of a demand, and certainly LED should lead to a reduction over there. Frankly speaking, we don't have the number readily available, Mr. Costa, and what we'll try to do is revert back on this in terms of LED and SCADA adoption, possibly how much. So it would be good if you can leave your email ID, and then we'll try to revert back on that. Thank you. There's another question from Mr. Albert Da Costa. Is there a thinking in discounts for having thermal PPAs for new capacity to be lower for a lower tenure, something like 10 to 12 years, as compared to a longish one of 25 to 30? And how long are thermal PPAs in other developing countries? See, frankly speaking, from a developer perspective, and I know someone who says that I'm going to set up a thermal capacity, and the financier who's going to finance the capacity uh, for recovery of your project cost and the attendant returns, you'll require a PPA which are long term in nature, and for financiers they would like to see a long PPAs which will ensure that there is a stability of cash flow, which will ensure that repayments happen. So in the other developing countries, the PPAs will be long-term nature only, and by and large, and so also in our country. Uh, of course, I mean, someone who sets up plant without a PPA, then will go to market and sign up whatever is attractive. So it could be short, and it could be short could be as short as 3 months, 6 months, or it could be medium term, which could be a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. But otherwise, PPAs, if they come up, generally will be for a long term in nature. Um, Earlier, of course, this used to be 25 to 30. A bit of a shortening can be possible, but significantly lower commitments on that may not be really attractive for both developer and for the financier. So uh, something like 15 to 20 years, which will ensure that you have a recovery of your plant cost and then the attendant returns. Okay. In terms, there's another question from Mr. Anurag Shah, and he asks, what are the major risks for all type of powers in the medium term? And Anurag, frankly speaking, there's a good question. And major risk, if you talk of all type of powers, then all of them, see, frankly speaking, are exposed to or committed to the state discoms and their fortunes, and that remains one of the big hindrance as far as the power generators are concerned, in terms of the assurance of payment and timeliness of payment and so on. Uh, unless we see the improvement in the power sector in terms of some of these issues, and that boils down to the financial position of the discoms and their AT&C losses and so on. So that's really the big challenge as far as all type of generators are concerned. Each of the generator otherwise would have their own specific challenges. The thermal guys may have something to do with fuel related issues. Um, Solar and wind, especially the solar, may have issues related to possibly coming up in terms of technology and so on, in terms of availability of grid and so on. Some of those challenges. So, but it remains that, in the country, the largest off takers are, of course, the state discoms, and counterparty risk, as we call it, remains the issue. When we look at these projects in terms of ratings, the big risk in each of the analysis that comes up is that of a counterparty. The credit ratings, they get sort of constrained by the counterparty rating. Really, you'd not see too much of a difference between the off-taker's rating and the rating that a project company will get. Some specific structurings and things like that may give a bit of a leeway in terms of having better rating than the off-taker rating, but by and large, that remains a central piece as far as the risk is concerned in terms of analysis. Uh, Now, unless, if you have a PPA, which very easily you can move out of that PPA if the state discoms don't pay up. So if you can move out of that, and very easily you can find someone who's going to buy your power at a remunerative risk, then of course then the discom risk is mitigated to that extent. But willy-nilly, I think you'll the issue of a exposure to state discoms, that keeps on coming up. Um, some states have shown improvement, some states showed improvement, but again slipped and so on. Names are there for all of you to see. So that is what I'll say as far as this particular question is concerned. There's an interesting question from Mr. Jacob Jolly, and he asks, will utility scale energy storage projects be able to create an impact considering the growing size of a renewable energy share? Yeah, I mean, frankly speaking, Jacob, once you have a utility scale, I don't know how they will come up, and utility scale storages could be in terms of battery storages, in terms of hydro storages with a upstream pond and a downstream pond and so on, and pumping solutions and things like that. Um, uh, it's been tried out at a sort of a 100 megawatt type of storage has been tried out somewhere in Africa and so on. So if they come up, they will certainly create an impact. Possibly, once you have storage, the some of the challenges that are there as far as the renewables are concerned. Uh, some of the challenges that are there as far as renewables are concerned is they are a bit infirm, not available when you want it. Their solar is available during the day, wind could be possibly in the evening. So can you really rely on that? And storages, frankly speaking, will smoothen out these some of these issues very clearly. So if you have storages, there could be a situation that some of the geographies can totally do away with the thermal power requirement. Possibly it would be game changer as and when it happens. uh, the question is when it happens, while uh, enough technical solutions are available, for them to be competitively and on grid scale, those are the challenges. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. With this, we will come to end of this particular webinar. If you have any questions, you can revert back in terms of writing a mail to us, and so also in terms of a feedback. With this, I'll say on behalf of my colleagues, thanks to all of the participants, and a goodbye. Thank you.